First question for Scotty.
Can it be the same last year? What's coming out for you next?
The next release is called Sunrise Over Savannah, which was it's been a tough year because we've been working all summer, and so I didn't have a whole lot of time to write. But the story has been brewing since last summer, and it was inspired by a trip to Savannah. For those of you who know us or know that we are a boat that we live in Martha's Vineyard that we bring down south every winter, and we stopped in Savannah and met a gentleman named Thompson, who was a deckhand, that inspired this entire story, along with us waking up at 6:35 and watching the sunrise over the marshlands of Savannah, and this story just came together.
I'm from Savannah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
My husband's from Savannah.
You need to come say hello next time.
I will.
So people in the back can hear your question.
What was your favorite spot in my city?
Well, we were on the Intercoastal Waterway all the way through.
So
We
you were on
went
Tiger?
to a restaurant called the Pink House, I think, which was very
Stunning.
Is it a good one? It's a good
Yeah.
one.
Everyone take note, visit the pink house when you go to
Visit Savannah.
It's wonderful. It's beautiful. They have all the little parks and squares and the
Oh,
multicolored
it's
trees.
stunning.
Everything is magical about this.
Yeah, I live in
It
a
was beautiful.
amazing.
When you're writing, obviously you write contemporary stories, and I wonder about this with contemporary writers. Do you feel more comfortable writing locations where you have actually been?
I do.
You do?
It saves a whole lot of time on research as well. And I actually wrote my second book took place in Alaska, and most of a series of my books took place in Alaska. And I actually got a call from a long email from a reader that told me that Sewell, Alaska, is not a suburb of Anchorage. And so I thought it was hysterical because for me I needed a suburb, someplace close enough but not too close. And I Googled, and Sewell was what came up. And I started reading how far it was, and so I got an email saying it wasn't a suburb, but I thought it was very funny.
Next question.
In the mystery of Ruby Lode, which was great, you mixed a number of different elements, contemporary, you had the historical element, and then the supernatural, and it was really successful. Which ones did you enjoy, one element more than another?
I enjoyed the paranormal part for the first, because that's my first stab at paranormal. And the Ruby Lode mine is actually owned by very dear friends of ours. And so that's how we were having dinner with them, and they were talking to us about the mine and Ruby Lode, and all of a sudden something popped into my mind that Ruby Lode would be a great name for a book. And I actually had all of the characters' names or real people from, I have all the documentation of when the mine was deeded to the family and all these things, and all the names and dates and all the wording in the beginning when they're bidding on this mine is all real information. So the fun part, I had all the information there, but the fun part was the paranormal, because as Mary said earlier, you can go anywhere with it. You don't have to check your facts. No one can argue that, the ghosts look like this. The ghosts don't look like that. So it was really fun to be able to build this paranormal story around a love story, and I mean, it was fun. It was probably the funnest book I've ever written.
Next question. I really should have put my
Roller
sneakers on.
skates. Yeah.
It's a good thing I walk well in heels.
When you write, how's your process? Do you build the characters first? Do you imagine a setting?
I knew
conflict?
that question was coming.
I knew it was.
Because it's
Mary
probably,
had the question
it's probably very
prepared for it
bizarre
now.
compared to all my coworkers. But I start out with an idea, and I try to write an outline, and then I start writing the story. And as most people know, the story takes on a mind of its own. And I can try to make it follow my guideline, but it always goes the way it's supposed to go. And so when I try to make it do what I want it to do, I explain my finger on the backspace key until it's all gone. And then when I finally give in to where the story is actually going is where it goes. And so, and many times my outline starts out and I can follow it through half of the book, but then it actually does take on a mind of its own. A lot of people, I've gotten some feedback about how detailed my books are, but it's really important for me when I describe a setting that the reader sees exactly what I'm seeing, down to the linens on a table, and because I want people in their mind to picture exactly, especially if I'm writing about something like a wedding or a this or that. I mean, I want people to picture stepping into a room and being overwhelmed and have their breath be taken away by the beauty of a setting. And so a lot of people say it bogs down the story, but then a lot of people say, oh my God, I felt like I was right there in the scene with you when I was reading it. And so the process for me really, and it changes sometimes from book to book, depending on the topic. And when there's a series going on, where you start off in the beginning is almost where the same process goes for each one of those books, but then the next book you write starts off a different type of an inspiration or a method, or sometimes I don't even have the middle or the ending of a book when I start it. All I know is that's my favorite part of the entire book is the opening scene. It's the funnest part for me to write. And then normally the story, whether I have an outline or not, will follow. And it'll just, as I'm writing, things are developing in my head, and I can't wait. I can't type fast enough to get the stuff that I want to get down before I forget it.
Next question. Amy, you're next.
Do you ever find that when you're writing a story, just out of the blue, you'll just stop and something will come to you, another character, another story, and you will move on and come back? Is there a process? Never. You're just
I
always
can't.
Oh, you don't, do you jump from story to story to get a new idea?
No. I'm a one-man book. And that's because men don't multitask as well as women do. And so I cannot sit here, and I can't write this, and I can't jump ahead and write another chapter, or even think about another book when I'm working on one, because I really get tunnel vision, and I eat and sleep and breathe that story until it's finished. And I can't jump ahead. No.
How do you handle bad reviews?
Sometimes well, sometimes not so well.
Do you
For those of you who know me, you have seen a couple of, in my younger days, I've seen a couple of responses that I wish I could hit the delete key on. But it's important to me that I don't mind a constructive review. I love a constructive review. I love someone who says, I appreciate the time that you devoted to writing this book. It wasn't the right book for me for these reasons. Can handle that without a doubt. It's when people just question everything that you do, everything you stand for, everything that you are, because they didn't like your book. Or one particular line in your book did not ring true to someone, or annoyed them, or one sexual act in one of my books sent somebody on a rampage in Goodreads. Because of one particular act that she sent the book back saying it she reported as bad content or it was just
Is there any content that people will never find in your book?
Yes. Well, no. Yeah. No. Yes and no. If the book calls for the content, in my opinion, it'll be in there. But I'm not. For those of you who have read my books,
You'll never write.
No, I don't. Well, not unless if a story, if something inspires me about a story, I will definitely write about a story. If the book calls for it, it's there.
Okay, I just wanted to know, do you have any characters in your book that just irritate the hell out of you to have to write?
Yes. And it's the hardest. I was just talking to my BFF, Jay Peterson, about this, because I have a tough time getting outside of my head to write a character that I don't like. Because I have a connection with each one of my characters in some way, shape, or form. And all of my characters have some part of me in them, as weird as that sounds. And so for me to dig down and get the inner asshole out and get it into another character, it's kind of hard to look at yourself and say, oh my God, you can be an ass. And then write that part of it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, there are some, it's hard to write a character that you don't like.
Which character?
I knew you were going to ask me that question. It was actually the villain in An Unconventional Courtship. And I understood the villain's motives from the beginning, but I didn't like the cloak. To be a villain is one thing, but to be a villain under the pretense of caring is a whole different thing. So to write this villain who was inside this character's life, but have him being like a puppeteer pulling the strings behind the scene, it's one thing to be a bad person, but don't do it under the cloak of loving someone or caring about what happens to them.
Next question.
Excuse me, Katie.
So do you think you'll take another stab at Paranormal?
I would like to, yes, actually. I would like to, the guys in the Mystery of Ruby Lode they're explorers of mines and caves.
Sorry.
You're okay. Go ahead, take that call.
No, I will not, but I'll get to see my special guest.
So anyway, the guys from Ruby Lode that's what they do. They're spelunkers. That's what they do for their spare time and their fun. And so I've got another story in the back of my head of their next adventure. So yeah, that's right.
Next question.
Is there any subgenre that you haven't written that you'd like to?
Well, no, not really, because again, for those of you who read my books, know that they're about adult people. They're about adult love stories and adult situations. I'm not really a guy who likes a whole lot of angst, because I believe adults and people who have issues can talk through them. And I'm not one for all of those misunderstandings that lead to some other misunderstandings or that lead to cheating. And I don't believe in cheating. And so all of those things really cause me a lot of angst to have to write. So I don't know how to write a cheater. It's one of those things that I want my characters to be adults and to talk through and to work through their problems and still have some issues and some things to work through, but to work through them like adults. And so I'm not that kind of. So I love the love story thing, and I love the paranormal mixed with love stories, mixed with a few things here and there, but I think this is what I do. It's kind of, it would be like me trying to drive a race car for a living. I don't think it would be successful.
So
But it would be rid with me.
I have the last question for Scotty, and it's from a shy audience member.
Okay.
And they would like to know, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were writing your first book, before it was published, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to calm down my raunchy sex scene.
Really?
Yeah, they have really calmed down over the couple of few
Okay,
years.
I'm reading the early stuff.
No, my first book was a lot of. They asked the question earlier. It was a lot of me. My first novel was a lot of me. But I was just learning on how to write those things. And of course, we've all had sex, but nobody's ever written it down. And so it's kind of. I'm going through my mind thinking, how can I get this across? And the only thing I had as a reference was all the books I've read. And so, it's bits and pieces of things that I've read and seen and put together in my own words that, in my opinion, didn't flow very well. Were very choppy and would not prove for a fun experience.
Thank you,
My
sir.
pleasure. Thank you.